and the Wounded Warrior Project for organizing the ride and for their efforts to serve those wounded.
And we welcome you back in here to Newsmax Now on Newsmax TV. There you see VA Secretary Bob McDonnell there at the podium, flanked by President Obama to his left and Vice President Joe Biden. An event taking place at the White House as we speak right now. You're seeing our live coverage of this, honoring wounded veterans and wounded warriors, something that we cannot do too often. This taking place at the White House right now. We'll continue to look back in there and see what else is taking place. Again, as this is Bob McDonnell, the VA Secretary. They're speaking at the White House today alongside President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, honoring wounded veterans. We welcome you back in here to Newsmax Now. John Bachman, Miranda Khan here. And we're going to start our political roundtable right now and bring in Liz Peek, a columnist from the Fiscal Times.
Good morning, Liz. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure, because today we're talking about women and money. You ready for this?
I like those topics.
Okay, good.
Sure.
According to the Washington Post, very soon the Senate will consider whether to support this campaign. Here's what it does. It urges the U.S. Treasury to put a woman on the $20 bill. The bill would actually require the Treasury to convene a panel of citizens to discuss the idea. The Post goes on to report the campaign, as Executive Director Susan Stone explained to the Post, was initially done in hopes of encouraging the White House to ask the Treasury Department to consider the change once they got enough votes. What are your thoughts on this, Liz? Good idea?
Well, look, no, I don't think it's a good idea. For one thing, it'll tip off just an enormous squabble about who that woman should be. Obviously, what we've done successfully to date is limit its appearance on currency to presidents. It seems to me we should continue that practice, because otherwise everyone is going to be peeved that their favorite candidate wasn't on the $20 bill. By the way, I don't know what Andrew Jackson did to be demoted, but in any event,
well,
you know, we're looking.
But Liz,
we're
you
looking
bring up an
apparently
excellent
at
point.
4 candidates.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point here. This is obviously politically motivated to go along with the Democrats' whole war on women thing. They've promoted 4 different women, obviously here: Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Wilma Painkiller, the past principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, and Eleanor Roosevelt. I mean, you can't argue against any of those women or what they've done. So you put Republicans in a very difficult position. Here is Democratic Senator Jeanine Shaheen, who's actually leading the charge on Capitol Hill. She went on MSNBC to talk about it. Let's take a listen.
We should get some women on some of our currency, and the effort is to get a woman on the $20 bill, and so we would set up the same process that was done back in the 20s when Andrew Jackson was chosen to be on the $20 bill, and it would set up a committee. We're hoping we can get a lot of support in the Senate, all of the women senators, and as many men as possible.
So there you go. And she's starting to set this up here. Now, this is going to get a vote in this committee, Liz. Do you think there's any way Republicans can avoid the temptation of taking this bait from Shaheen?
Well, look, what I would do if I were a Republican on that committee, I would really push for a whole other list of candidates. What about Sally Ride, who was our first female astronaut? What about the woman who created Mother's Day? What about the first Fortune 500 CEO? There are a lot of women who have done extraordinary things, but they haven't become president. And let's face it, that has been the measure so far, or the requirement for showing up on our currency. And I say, leave it at that. Otherwise, we're just going to have an enormous hailstorm of people defending one candidate or another, and as you say, it only is trouble.
All right, Liz, we'll leave it at that, as you say, and we thank you very much for your time. We've got the president speaking right now, so we're going to go to that real quick. We had mentioned this earlier. President Obama now speaking at the White House. Let's listen.
Cheer you on. Just to give you some sense of who these writers are, we've got heroes like Sergeant William Armstrong. Where's William? There he is in the back. William was 24 years old and serving in Afghanistan when a roadside bomb tore the ligaments in his knee and broke the bones in his leg. As a lifelong distance runner, he was devastated that he might never run again. But he didn't give up. His caretakers at Walter Reed got him a bike so he could get into shape. After a lot of surgeries, months of physical therapy, 2 weeks ago, William ran a marathon. I want to quote what William said here. He said, "This Army put me back together," he says, "but it was being with people with similar life experiences that exhilarated and motivated me. Thank you, William, for your incredible service. We got specialist Teresa Ann Jackson. Where's Teresa? There she is right there. 2 years ago, while serving as a medic at Fort Campbell, Teresa fell ill with a rare disease that affected her arteries. Doctors had to amputate both her feet. She remembers the shock and isolation she and her husband felt afterwards. And again, I want to quote her. I wasn't expecting to be in a wheelchair at 30, she says. And at her first Wounded Warrior event, she found a community of people who welcomed her, who understood what she was going through, who continue to support her today through her recovery. And today, Teresa wants to study to be a social worker so that she can give back to others. Teresa, we thank you for your...
All right, there you just heard President Obama thanking a couple of wounded veterans for their service. And again, as we mentioned, whether it comes from the president or whether it comes from anybody on the street, you can't do enough to thank these men and women for their sacrifice.
And it's so hard to hear. 30 years old, never expected to be in a wheelchair. That's just gut-wrenching sometimes.
And as hard as that is to hear, Miranda, when you hear her story about how she now wants to become a social worker to help out other folks, it's also inspiring as well. We were talking about the money issue, and we had to say goodbye to Liz Peek because we were going to talk about what the president was doing at the White House. But let's move on to our next topic here, and that is what was taking place on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Yeah, unless you were basically living under a rock, I'm pretty sure you saw this story. That was that small chopper that crashed on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol. The pilot had been planning this thing for quite some time, actually. His name is Doug Hughes, and he's trying to raise, according to him, awareness about campaign finance reform, but he's also raising awareness about security as well. But here's what he told the Tampa Bay Times just a while back.
I don't believe that the authorities are going to shoot down a 60-year-old mailman in a flying bicycle. I'm going to give them plenty of warning, well over an hour in advance of me getting to the no-fly zone, so that they know who I am and what I'm doing, and that it's intended to be nonviolent.
Well, there you go. He telegraphed this. He had it up on his webpage. Apparently it was streaming live. I saw an interview with the Tampa Bay Times reporter who was up there in Washington. He says they tried to call the feds. Liz, thank you very much for sticking around with us and going with us as we adjusted some changes here. But let me ask you a question. I have a kind of my own conspiracy theory here.
Of course you do.
This guy, I think he may have been on radar the whole time, and I think DHS did not want to make a bigger issue out of this. I don't know. I just can't see another embarrassment. Maybe it's my naivete, but I just don't want to believe that with this much prior notice that they would let this guy fly this close to Capitol Hill.
Well, I think it is really absurd, and I think it's just another indication, as you said earlier, that our security apparatus seems just to be in free fall. And I hearken back to a recent congressional inquiry into this, where the head of the Secret Service was being questioned about the multiple mishaps that we've seen from the Secret Service. And she was saying, and one of the congressmen was saying, why can't you fire these people? And she was saying, basically, it's not that simple. And I want people to know, your viewers to know, you can't fire a lot of government employees. We think tenure is only something that teachers get. Basically,
it's also
government
a problem
employees get
in a
that
lot of
too.
governments. Liz, we're out of time.
It
Thanks
is.
so much for sticking around. That's another topic for another day, and we'll definitely have you back to discuss.